I really wish I had an opportunity to ask Christopher Hitchens some questions because he raises so many good points about the fallacies within religions. And he spent a good part of the end of his life on debating this with religious leaders. And his questions were never properly answered by religious leaders because they don't really know what they're talking about. They don't know how to debate with the facts that science has discovered over the past 2,000 years. An important question that he raises is, how can any person look at the various religions and all the gods that they claim to have and make a decision on which is the right God? And I haven't heard a religious leader give a logical answer to that. I've written a number of papers on this subject, but I wanted to spend today to talk a little bit about how we can distinguish between the various gods. And in Christianity, Christians somehow deny the fact that there are more than one God out there.
There is no valid or coherent or consistent argument that would not work, if it comes to that, for the existence of any God. Now, I noticed it was by a slight work of elision, a bit of tap dancing there, that Dr. Turek went from being a deist to a theist, and then from being a theist to a Christian. Now, I know he does not believe in the existence of the sun god Ra. I'm practically certain he doesn't believe in the existence of Zeus. If you'll pick up a copy of my Portable Atheist, a selection of the finest writings by non-believers, down the years, and just turn to the 3 pages where H.L. Mencken lists the easiest to name 3,000 gods that used to be worshipped and that no longer are held to exist by anybody, you'll spare me the trouble of reading them out. No, he thinks he doesn't just know, Dr. Turek, that there is a God, he knows which one is the right one from a potentially infinite list, actually from a list that's as long as the number of people there are or have ever been in the human species, because if you ever argue with a theist or a deist, as I do every day, you'll find they all believe in a God of their very own. Indeed, they often say a personal God. Indeed, they often say a personal savior. So out of what are we reifying a concept that applies to all of us? Out of nothing but wish thinking and nonsense and fear and ignorance, and above all, and I'm not quitting on this point, servility.
So what do we mean when we say gods? Gods are a general term for spiritual beings that interact with humanity and make demands of them. Now, there are malevolent gods. There are, I would say, neutral gods, and then there are benevolent gods. But over all the benevolent gods is the creator of the spiritual world. He has a lot of characteristics that are applied to him by Christians, for example, because they think that there's only one God. But this God who spoke to Moses told him that the first commandment was, you shall only have one God and have no other gods before me. Well, that's clearly saying that there are many gods out there, and we need to discern which is the creator, which is the Father that Jesus taught, and which are the imposters. The examples that you see in history where people use gods to justify their actions is the evidence that we have that there are more than one God. Otherwise, we just have one chaotic God, which is what the Christians think. Many Christians think that there's one God who is vengeful, but then he's loving, so he's chaotic. Pure benevolence is true love. And that you would know as a parent that sometimes when you love your child, you need to be not vengeful, but you need to be just. You need to create boundaries so that they don't hurt themselves. You need to set guidelines for them. And that's not vengeful. That is just being loving to your children. And those are the characteristics that Jesus teaches us about. That the Father is a benevolent Father. And that comes best through in the story of the prodigal son. That regardless of what the prodigal son did, in the end, when he comes back begging for mercy, the Father gives him mercy. And that's not a vengeful God. When you look at the life of Socrates, for example, which is a strong image out of history, because Socrates is the father of logic. But in his work, if you read his dialogues that Plato brings to us, he talks about the gods. And he brought together the segments of Greece to talk about the god of Eros, the god of love. And what he was trying to do during this symposium was to find common ground amongst the three segments of Greek society. The enlightened Greek society, the Ionians, the pagan Greek society, the Dorians, and the military side of Greece, which were the Spartans. He failed to bring these segments of Greece together, and Greece fell to the pagan powers. And the result is that the pagan powers overtook the democratic society and then forced all the members of Greece to serve the pagan gods. Whereas underneath the democratic rule, up to that point, anybody could follow any god they wanted to. The story gets confused, but the real fact is that Socrates was arrested for perverting the minds of the youth. He was teaching them. So that went against the new rulers of Greek society, because he wouldn't pay homage to the pagan gods. He wouldn't bring blood sacrifices to the pagan gods as was demanded of all the residents of Athens. And so he chose death over going against his belief, his God, who doesn't ask for blood sacrifices, who isn't a vengeful God. And the God that he taught us about, the Eros, the God of love, is very similar to what Jesus taught us about. And yes, Jesus died instead of bowing to the God of this world or the God of the dead, as he said. So there are these basically two sides. There's a benevolent spiritual world and there's a malevolent spiritual world. And this shows up throughout humanity. You have those who follow the benevolent and they're not willing to do anything to save their lives. Socrates, Jesus, Joan of Arc. They're true to their belief, but that belief is a risk for the malevolent rulers. Truth will set you free, but in a world that doesn't want you to be free, that means death. And that's what happened. And so these gods who are malevolent gods, they sneak into the positions through corrupt priests, rulers, and they influence these corrupt people. And they use the words of the prophets and twist the words of the prophets to influence people. And I've talked a number of times about this. And that's where we are today with the misuse of Christianity, or the misuse of Judaism, or the misuse of Islam to fight wars and to oppress others and to commit genocide. This has nothing to do with a benevolent spiritual world. This has to do with malevolent beings who are influencing humanity to cause chaos because they thrive in chaos. That's what they want. And there's plenty of powerful men willing to do their bidding, as we can see today in the world around us. So I'd like to answer Christopher's question about all the gods, which I agree with. Which one do you follow? Well, you need to follow the one that is aligned with your morals. And I think Christopher's morals were much higher than many Christians that I've run across. And he's much more of a benevolent person than rulers using Christianity to justify war. So thank you, Christopher, for fighting for truth in this world. It's a very difficult fight.